So you've just come back from your health nurse or your GP or someone along those lines, and you've been told your baby, who has been incessantly crying for like the last forever, is just going through a normal developmental period known as purple crying. What is purple crying? And frankly, why am I a little bit annoyed with it? My name is Christian Flotter. Come with me as we dive on in. Thank you. Why did I say thank you? That was weird. So what exactly is purple crying? Well, purple crying, it's like the new colic, it's a way of being able to define a period of baby development. And it's an acronym. So the P stands for a peak of crying. And so we see the peak of crying occurring at around 2 months of age, but it tends to be between 2 weeks of age up until 4 to 5 months of age. This is a pretty typical process that occurs with a lot of baby crying behavior, in which we see quite a drop-off coming towards that 4 to 5 month of age. Drop-off, not ablation, mind you. Then we have the U, which it stands for unexpected. We have a resists soothing, there's a pain-like face, it's long-lasting, and it tends to happen in the evenings. So, purple, and that's our acronym. Now, what's really interesting about this one is it doesn't quite match up with everything that we do see going on. And if I may actually pull a quote from the Purple Crying website, babies act like they are in pain even when they are not. Now this is very interesting because they talk about pain and give an analogy to sickness, when in reality pain is not a sickness. And it's interesting because we talk about it being unexpected and it just sort of transiently comes and goes. And you see that quite often with babies. They kind of have a happy period and then they kind of start just crying and become really unsettled, typically more so in the evenings. I actually consider baby colicky pain type of crying to be more like a person with a sprained ankle. You know what? When you've got a sprained ankle and you have it at rest and it's not moving, you're actually feeling pretty okay. It's there in the background, but it's not interfering too much. But the minute you start moving that pained ankle, that's when you start becoming a little bit uncomfortable. And this is one of the things that I do see with a lot of babies who have unexplained crying or very unsettled in behavior. And this is where the purple crying stuff starts to become a little bit interesting. They talk about not having, or babies not having, pain perception. We actually know this to be false. Back in 2017, Martiniuk led a systematic review looking at pain processes in infants, and they actually found that babies share 19 of the 21 areas involved with pain as with adults. I've talked about this one previously. You can probably just click this thing, I don't even know if it's that thing, and have a look-see about that. We talk all about pain there. But the only places they don't experience pain are the emotional association areas. Now then there's also questions, what about babies who may be experiencing like a migraine? Back in 2021, Adam Darks, I believe it was, looked at central sensitization, and they found that babies who are colicky or very unsettled are more likely exhibiting indications of central sensitization, a process very similar to that of a migraine. And actually it's funny that it works that way. Kids who have colic are more likely to grow up ending up experiencing migraines. Adults who experience migraines are more likely to have kids who are unsettled or colicky. Then we also look at our own research. We looked at babies who were unsettled, and lo and behold, a good chunk of them ended up with musculoskeletal problems. So this raises that question, what if purple crying, look, it may be a thing for some children, but I don't think it's quite that clear cut. We can't just be looking at it and kind of going, oh, it's definitely purple crying, oh, it's definitely this, when there's a whole possibility of a spectrum of presentation. The world very rarely is in black and white. There's a whole lot of gray in the middle. And we see this with a lot of disorders and syndromes which have a spectrum about them. Perhaps baby falls into one of these spectrum-based presentations. Now the reason I say this, and the reason I'm very cautious with purple crying, is because I don't want to miss something. Now you see, if we just lump it down as being a normal developmental process, there's actually a chance that what if your child has something underneath the surface? What if there's something else going on? What if you're like, could this actually be some other cause behind what's going on here? If I may read again from the Purple Crying website, if prolonged crying really was an indication of a disease, then some would be sick later in life. Interesting that you bring this up, because guess what has recently come out? If I reach forward and grab it. This is a very interesting new paper that has just come out this year by Valla et al., Elizabeth Valla, and it's looking at infants who have difficulty with sleeping and are very unsettled, otherwise known as colic. They took 86,724 children in Norway and had a look at their behaviors. So they asked the yes/no question: does your child experience colic? So this was a subjective response by the parents, but then they also performed a neurodevelopmental questionnaire. Okay, this is known as the Ages and Stages questionnaire. It's looking about how your child is developing, how they're growing, and how they are going in comparison to others based on a normal trend. Guess what? Infants who had experienced colic under the age of 6 months were more likely to experience developmental delays in emotional and behavioral problems. Now, this is pretty substantial. Colic led to decreased development. Colic led to increased internalizing problems. Okay, internalizing problems are quite pronounced. Okay, these are the things like depression, anxiety, social anxiety, somatic complaints, so aches and pains, everything's hurting because it's just hurting. What are we seeing more of these days? We're seeing more kids with anxieties, depressions, aches and pains. Everything's becoming a little bit more pronounced. And this actually has a further tie-in. But in 2019, Salavera et al., they looked at kids who have internalizing behaviors in adolescent age range, so 12 to 17-year-olds. And guess what? When they look at those kids with increased internalizing problems, they have decreased emotional intelligence. They have decreased socializing skills. Now, this doesn't mean that a colicky baby is going to end up with socializing skill problems, but it's that lead-in. So we see kids with colic, it increases their risk of internalizing behaviors, which increases our risk of decreased emotional skills, which increases our risk of decreased social skills. So it seems to lead from one into the other. Now, how could this happen? Well, the authors of the Valla et al. Paper actually give a couple of suggestions as to how this may be. One looking at the parent and one looking at the child. Now, the one looking at the parent, it comes down to the parent is getting disrupted. Okay, babies waking up all the time, the parents are exhausted, and exhausted parents don't feel like interacting with their babies. And as a result, baby may get reduced stimulation. They may not get that interaction as they need to help brain development to occur. And then secondly, they also look at the way in the baby that disruptions to normal sleep and being unsettled all the time, it can influence the brain circuitry that are involved with emotional regulation, emotional behavioral responses, how we interact with certain scenarios. So this is something that's really quite interesting. We've got a two-pronged possibility. And you know what? In some kids, it could be both. So, what does this mean to us? Now, the caveats here is the Valla study was looking at children at 1.5, 3, and 5 years of age. So we don't know beyond that stage. Could they actually just snap out of it later on? We're not sure. Now, the other thing, it doesn't really give us a specific cause. It doesn't say, okay, because of this condition causing this colic, therefore you're going to get. It doesn't give us a cause. It just states kids experiencing colic and unsettled behavior, sleep disturbances. But then what could actually be causing some colic? Gut. The gut is a major source of problems in a lot of kids. You start having a bit of a cow's milk protein sensitivity. That's going to create a disturbance inside our gut. It's going to ramp up our system, make us feel uncomfortable. It typically happens in the afternoons and evenings. We'll start crying, and then when that stomach cramp passes, we're actually feeling pretty good. So could it be a bit of a gut issue? Could it be a UTI? urinary tract infections, strangely, happen more frequently in young boys under the age of 12 months than they do in girls. The only symptom you may be getting, aside from a bit of a fever, may be unsettled behavior. So we've got to be careful because that needs medical attention. Could there be a musculoskeletal thing going on? So the papers we looked at shoulder function. Shoulder function led to unsettled behavior and an unhappy child. Maybe your kid's sort of fixed in a certain position. They can't turn their head as well to the other side. Maybe they're constantly turning that way and they're getting some changes to the normal head shape. These are things that may be indicating a musculoskeletal condition which may be contributing to your child's discomfort. And lastly, looking at that Adam Dark's central sensitization. Gosh, I really hope I've got that person's name right. Alexandra Adam Darks. I'm pretty sure that's it.
Wrong answer.
Anyway, if you've got some central sensitization going on, that child, every little stimulus, every little input that's coming in is going to feel much, much more pronounced. So you can see it's not just a period. If it was just a period, all babies would go through it. Okay, not all babies do. If it's not an issue, if it's something that's actually going on, this would explain why in some children it comes, it goes, but it doesn't disappear. It still remains because there may be an unresolved underlying something that's going on. And I don't know about you, but I would rather get my child assessed and checked out by my healthcare practitioner to make sure there's nothing in the gut, the UTIs, the musculoskeletal systems that could be promoting this unsettled behavior rather than just waiting it out to see what goes on. So if you have any questions, feel free to shoot them through. Otherwise, I'll see you again next time. Bye now.